1 p.m. May 2nd, the Platting Board will come to order. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call and establish a quorum?
Yes. Member Burtz?
Present.
Member Krieger?
Present.
Member Bush?
I'm here.
Member Cohn?
Present.
Member Goodman?
Present.
And Chair Johnson.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Board Member Burtz, would you lead us in the pledge, please? To the board, I hope everybody has a copy of the agenda before you. Are there any changes to today's agenda? Seeing and hearing none, today's agenda is approved as written. To the board, do you have the minutes of the April 18th, 2024 meeting before you? Are there any changes, additions, or deletions to the April 18th minutes? Hearing seen none, the minutes are approved unanimously. At this point in time, I would like to open the floor for audience participation. It's to comment on any item that is not on today's agenda, so if you would like to address the board, why please come forward, state your name and sign the register. Seeing and hearing none, this portion of the audience participation is closed. We have no unfinished business. We have no reconsideration of appeals, so we'll get right into today's business at hand. The first case to be heard before the board today is Misty Meadows. Misty Meadows, the request is to create 8 lots from tax parcel A14, created by waiver resolution number 76-19-PWM, recorded as 79258W, to be known as Misty Meadows, containing 10.5 acres plus or minus. The petitioner is requesting a variance from MSB 4320060D. The property is located north of West Hawk Lane, south of West Delroy Road, and directly west of the West Parks Highway. Tax ID 17 November 03 Whiskey 02 Alpha 014. Within the northeast quarter, section 02, township 17 north, range 03 west, Seward Meridian, Alaska, in the city of Houston and in Assembly District 7. May I have a staff report? Oh, I need ex parte. Oh, mailings. Madam Clerk, do you have mailings on this and the date?
Yes, there was 62 public notices mailed April 8th, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now may I have the staff report? Oh, to the board. Give me 6 more months and I'll get this down, Fred. Okay. To the board, in order to ensure fair decision on platting decision boards, the following shall be read by the chair. Sounds like Joe Biden, doesn't it, reading his teleprompter? To the board, do you or any member of your immediate family have a substantial financial interest in any property affected by this decision, or will you recognize a foreseeable profit as a result of this decision? Seeing and hearing none. Number 2, have you received or otherwise engaged in ex parte contact with the applicant, other parties interested in the application, or members of the public concerning the application or issues presented in this application, either before the application or during any period of time the matter is submitted for decision outside of the public process by the borough? Hearing seen none. And lastly, are you able to make an impartial decision? Hearing seen none. Now, for staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed Misty Meadow subdivision will create 8 lots ranging in size between 40,016 square feet up to 79,688 square feet. Access for the proposed lots will be by the internal street being granted or dedicated this subdivision. I can't speak either, apparently. The petitioner is requesting a variance from MSB 4320-060D, dedication to the public. The variance request is submitted at Exhibit D with supporting criteria A through C. The request is to remove the requirement of connecting to West Little Millers Road, located on the southwest boundary of the property. Legal and physical access requirements will be met once the internal street is constructed. Soils report was submitted pursuant to code. Curtis Holler, professional engineer, notes that based on the available soils and water table information, topography, borough code definitions, and observations at the site, the proposed lots 1 through 8 will each contain over 10,000 square feet of contiguous usable septic area and an additional 10,000 square feet of usable building area. Topographic mapping and as-built were submitted and are shown on the agenda plat. A drainage plan was submitted and is at Exhibit B3. An average daily traffic count calculation was submitted, and that is seen at Exhibit C. ADOT-MPF has no objections to the proposed plat, but does request that a plat note be added stating that no direct access shall be granted to the Parks Highway. This is at recommendation number 5. City of Houston Public Works has no objections to the proposed plat. Matsu Borough Department of Public Works does not support the variance request. North Husk Circle should be extended to West Little Millers Road. As shown on the submitted figure, in the variance request, a curved alignment connecting these two roads is possible with minimal to no disturbance to wetlands. There is no mention of peat in this area in the soils report, and the 1.5-foot thick overburden noted in test hole 4 labeled as low S. Removal of the material in this area is no more onerous than removal of material for the rest of the road alignment. In accordance with the requirements for interconnectivity described in MSB 4320-060D, this connection would provide alternative routes for emergency services, improve maintenance operations, and more efficient routes for bus, garbage, fuel, septic, delivery services, multiple entry points and exit points in case of natural disaster, and looping of the utilities. There were no comments received from the public in response to the notice of public hearing. In both versions of the recommendations of conditions of approval, item number 4 lists the Matsu Borough Department of Public Works as the contact for approval of road construction. Platting staff would like to change that to reflect the City of Houston, as the proposed subdivision is within the City of Houston city limits. In conclusion, the variance request was submitted with the required supporting criteria A through C in compliance with Borough Code. There were no objections received from any federal or state agencies. There was one objection to the variance received from the Borough Department of Public Works. Platting staff has provided the board findings of fact for denial of the variance, as well as findings of fact for approval of the variance, for whichever one you decide to go with. The preliminary plat of Misty Meadow is consistent with Alaska statutes and borough codes. There were no objections received from any federal or state agencies. There was one objection with regards to the variance from Matsu Borough Public Works. There were no comments received from the public in response to the notice of public hearing. Legal and physical access will exist once the internal street construction has been completed pursuant to code. Frontage will exist per code. A soils report was submitted noting that all proposed lots will meet the minimum usable area requirements. Platting staff has provided 2 sets of recommendations of conditions of approval, one based on approval of the variance request with 8 recommendations for conditions of approval and 11 findings of fact, as well as one based upon denial of the variance request with 8 recommendations for conditions of approval and the same 11 findings of fact.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Point of clarification for myself, you had a change on item number 4 on one of the recommendations for conditions of approval. Could you clarify that, which one that was, so I can get that in my notes?
Yes, certainly. In both versions of the recommendations, either approval or denial of the variance, number 4 revolves around the road construction sign-off, Right now, it shows the Borough Department of Public Works. It needs to be changed to reflect the City of Houston.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you.
Is that recorded, Madam Clerk, in your notes?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to ask the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward and address the board, please.
Hi, Gary LaRusso with Keystone Surveying, representing the petitioners. Kurt Holler's with us today. You probably don't see him much. And the petitioners are here today, Scott and Tyler Johannes. I guess we can, well, y'all know I normally don't say much at this point, but I think we could talk about the variance a little bit. When we started this project, we went up to the City of Houston and sat down with the Public Works Director to discuss what we're doing and see if there was anything in particular he needed. And we discussed connection. He didn't want it. The City of Houston maintains their roads. He didn't want to maintain it. He doesn't want the connection. Unfortunately, we're stuck with a design from the adjoining subdivision. If you look at your exhibit D7, I think that's the right one. Which isn't in the packet that was out there, so hang on a second. Thanks, sir. Yeah. Exhibit D7, I sketched what should have happened with the subdivision next door, and it would have made a connection feasible and economical too, actually. But, and it wouldn't hurt the subdivision. Unfortunately, there wasn't any foresight in where they put the right-of-way, and it would force us to go down into an area that's low and wet. It may have 1.5 feet of overburden over it, but you have to dig that out in order to build the road, and then you're down in the water table and the wet area. I'm on the Army Corps of Engineers wetland delineators list. I know what a wetland is. I've been there. I've been on site. I've seen it. Mr. Holler's been there and seen it as well. So last week, I met with someone from the Corps just to see. And without getting into specifics with the Corps person, because they can't make specific comments unless you actually make a submittal. And that costs at least several thousands of dollars, which you didn't want to do. I just wanted general information. And I showed them what was going on, and I said, what are the chances that you would issue a permit? And they said, very low. And the reason being is because all the properties have other access. And when there's other access, they don't like to give out permits. Another reason why they said they wouldn't give a permit, or most likely, which they said it was safe for me to say that without doing a submittal, that it was highly unlikely they would give a permit. The other reason is any construction there would require a culvert. And with a culvert, they said, the culvert causes a loss of aquatic habitat. That's a quote. And they also said, it's not needed as all areas have other access. Now, I understand why that section of Borough Code's in there, and it's a good section of code. When we do a rewrite, or parts of 43, We need to address these situations where there's old rights-of-way that were put in places that aren't a good place to have connections. But right now, we're stuck with it. We're stuck with what was given, so we're asking for a variance to that. If you read through the variance, what I've submitted, you can see that we're stuck with it, which is an impossible situation for us. And the amount of road we'd have to build is double what we really need to build. Plus the doubling of utilities. Right now, when people ask me, what does it cost to do a subdivision? I tell them right now it's about $200 a foot. Am I over the 3 minutes, Fred? Okay, I'll stop. We'll save it for the next 5.
Thank you, sir. At this point in time, I would like to open the floor for public testimony on Misty Meadows. If anyone would like to speak, please come forward, sign the register, and state your name. Is there anyone online for this? There's 2 people online. Okay. To those online, is anyone online would like to speak to Misty Meadows? If so, please press *3. Any response, Mr. Platting Officer?
Nobody.
Okay, thank you. At this point in time, we will close public testimony. Mr. LaRusso, you did not have time to finish. Would you like to come back and?
Thank you. I think the petitioners have something to say, and normally we use this time for questions, so I'll ask Kurt Holler to come up, and I'll ask the board that if you have questions, to ask them while we're here so we can answer them. But just to continue on, I was at City of Houston yesterday to get a sign-off on a plat, a tax sign-off that I forgot to get. Shame on me. But I spoke with the Public Works Director again. He stated he has no objection to the plat we submitted. He doesn't want the road. They have to maintain it. They don't want it. I think Mr. Harler wanted to speak.
Just here to answer questions.
Okay.
Sign in, though.
Oh, yes. And you could see the City of Houston's non-objection at Exhibit F. This is Mr. Scott Johannes. He's built a lot of the commercial buildings in this valley. So.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to, a couple things. One, what's happened to the subdivision is what's being asked to be done makes the subdivision totally infeasible. You've only got a few lots, so when you double the amount of roads and the extension, it kills it. And if the design had been, like Gary said earlier, what made sense for connection, it would have been feasible. But because of the way it goes all the way around, it does double what would have to be done. So any feasibility that there is of the subdivision move forward goes away by requiring that extension. The other part to it is that, at Gary's request, he said, why don't you call and see if you can get a meeting with the platting department to do it. So I called and actually left a message for Alex Strawn. He called me back and I explained the situation. And he said, well, let me look into it and I'll get back to you. So he called me back and said he discussed it, reviewed it, he was familiar with it, and that there wasn't really anything to discuss because the code was what the code was, and they were going to stick with it. And so I kind of grilled him a little bit about, well, it doesn't make sense. It's going to require us to do something that, eventually we're going to be back here because when this gets approved and then we go to the Corps and the Corps says we can't build it, we're going to be back. It kills the project, and I don't think the planning department's goal is to inhibit development. It's to help support it. So requiring something that's gonna kill a project is not feasible. And the city of Houston doesn't want it, and they've already approved it. So with all those things said, it does not make any sense not to approve. And he said, well, he agreed that that all made sense, but he said that's what the planning board's for. So that's why we're here today is, I guess when the code doesn't make sense, we come before you guys and you guys have the opportunity to do what's correct there. So.
Are there any questions for the petitioners at this time from the board? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Bush does have a question?
Yes, sorry about that. So, aside from the cost and maybe inhibiting the project, excuse me. We got, on another objection for another subdivision, they referenced us to the construction manual, which is tied to the plating board now. And under A 04.2, item C, it says residential subcollector streets shall be designed to exclude all external through traffic that has neither origin or destination on the residential subcollectors. So that would, I'm thinking that would support what you wish to do. Because the construction manual doesn't want a through street there unless they have business for being in that subdivision, if I'm reading that right, so. Looks like,
I'm gonna defer to Kurt Holler on that one. Sorry.
So the section you're talking, that Mr. Bush is talking about is in the SCM, page 3, it's the section A, which speaks to residential subcollector street. If that's the right.
I guess my question is, do you see it the same way I do, that it supports your wishes?
I think so. The purpose of having all these cul-de-sacs is traffic quieting, calming. The purpose of having the cul-de-sacs is to keep the through traffic down and minimize the amount of traffic in front of a given driveway. And we do that by having a bunch of cul-de-sacs and quiet areas out there, which is what this is. We're talking about 8 lots here.
Okay,
And even in the other direction, it's this similar number of lots. I think it's 5 the other way, so.
sounds good, thank you.
Any more questions for the board, from the board? Okay, hearing, thank you very much. We will close this portion of the hearing. I would entertain a motion from the board so we can put this on the table for discussion. I think we need to address the variance first. Is that correct, Mr. Plating Officer? Do you concur, Fred? Okay. So I think the first thing that we need to talk about is the variance before we can go on to approve the plat. So I would entertain some. Yes, Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. I move to approve the variance request from Matsuburo 43.20.060, Section 02, Township 17 North, Range 03 West, Seward Meridian, Alaska. Based on the finding of facts 1 through 10, and adding the objection from the
Yeah, I'll correct that.
Public Works Department to item number 4. And 11 findings of fact.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bush. board discussion on this variance request? Do you second it, Mr. Cohn? Okay, we have a first and a second. Now we're open for discussion. Mr. Bush?
Yeah, I think the construction manual helps out the petitioner's request here to approve this variance request, where the construction manual indicates that they don't want to encourage any through street that doesn't have business being in the subdivision, the way I read it. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Anyone else? Oh, Fred, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would put out that A402 speaks of residential sub-collector roads, and I don't believe the roads in this subdivision would rise to that level. I don't think the traffic count would put them to where we would be requiring that, so they would be residential roads, so A402 doesn't apply at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Anyone else? You know, I'm inclined to support Mr. Bush's motion. This basically falls within the purview of the city of Houston, and their recommendation, in my mind, overweighs the objection of the borough's Public Work Department. No deference to Public Works. I think they do a good job, but I think this makes sense for the subdivision, so I will be a yes vote on this. Is there any more discussion? This is to approve the variance. Are we ready for a vote? Is there any objection to approving this variance on Misty Meadows? Hearing and seeing none, the variance is approved unanimously. Now let's move on to the second question to be answered is the request for the plat. May I hear a motion? Mr. Wagner.
Just to help clarify for the board, that would be the second to last on page 9 of 10. It'd be the recommendation at the top of page 9 of 10 in your staff report is the condition of approval based on approval of the variance request. We
Mr.
tried to come loaded for every option that we had coming before you.
You know, thank you for that clarification. I would like to commend the staff for a complete write-up and giving us the options without having to do the research ourselves, so thank you. So there again, I ask for a motion to approve this plat. Mr. Bush.
Yeah, I move to approve the preliminary plat of Misty Meadows, Section 02, Township 17 North, Range 03 West, Seward Meridian, Alaska, contingent on staff recommendations 1 through 8, and findings of fact 1 through 11C, and I think finding of fact, we need to add the objection from, no, I guess we don't. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Do I have a second on that?
I second the
Thank you, Ms.
motion.
Krieger. We have a first and a second. Let's open this for discussion among the board members. Is there any discussion? Are we ready to vote? Okay. Is there any objection to approving the plat for Misty Meadows with the variance approved and approving the plat? Hearing and seeing no objections, it passes unanimously. And we're going to take a 2-minute recess. Okay, we will reconvene. Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd just like to note that we overlooked on the roll call of calling what- Mr. Halford. I'm sorry. Mr. Halford, are you here? Thank you. I have a complete quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, let's continue on. The next case we have before us is Bogard Colonial Master Plan. I will read the request. Bogard Colonial MSP. The request is to create 58 lots by a 4-phase master plan from the tax parcel B20, created by warranty deed recorded at 2010-013-191-0, to be known as Bogard Colonial MSP, containing 33.71 acres plus or minus. The property is located east of North 49th State Street, north of East Palmer-Wasilla Highway, and directly south of West Bogard Road. Tax ID number 18 November 01 Echo 36 Bravo 020. Within the Northwest Quarter, Section 36, Township 18 North, Range 01 East, Seward Meridian, Alaska, in the Gateway Community Council area and Assembly District 2. This case was continued from April 24th to allow for proper public notification. Madam Secretary, mailings?
Yes, there was 100 public notices mailed April 8th, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. To the board. Do you or any member of your immediate family have substantial financial interest in any property affected by this decision, or will you recognize a foreseeable profit as a result of this decision? Hearing and seeing none. Have you received or otherwise engaged in ex parte contact with the applicant, other parties interested in the application, or members of the public concerning the application or issues presented in this application, either before the application or during any period of time the matter was submitted for decision, outside of the public process provided by the borough? Seeing and hearing none, are you able to be impartial in this decision? Seeing and hearing none, thank you. May I have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This case was originally continued from the April 4th, 2024 Platting Board hearing to allow time for proper notification as required by code. The proposed Bogard Colonial subdivision will create 58 lots by a 4-phase master plan. Lot sizes will range between 0.46 of an acre and 0.48 of an acre. Per MSB 432281A2, lots may be a minimum of 20,000 square feet, provided that they are serviced by an approved municipal water or septic system. The petitioner is proposing that these lots be serviced by the City of Palmer water system. Water lines must be installed for any lot being created during each phase of the plat prior to recordation. The petitioner will need to supply ADEC approval for the extension of the water line system, as well as an as-built showing the final design of the water distribution line layout and service, and make physical connection points for each of the lots as shown at recommendation number 6. Based on the supplied average daily traffic count, as seen at Exhibit E, no upgrades will be required for any of the existing roads. The location of the proposed access to West Bogard Road was determined by site distance, average spacing requirements, and in consideration with the proposed corridor access management plan for West Bogard Road. The petitioner has supplied an exhibit depicting an alteration for the proposed access onto North Hassan Bay Drive. This is seen at Exhibit J. The alteration is to address concerns that were raised at the April 4th meeting with regards to the spacing between the proposed access onto North Hassan Bay Drive and the existing driveway to the south of the entry. A soils report was submitted pursuant to code. 11 test holes were dug to a depth ranging between 10 and 14 feet. A sieve analysis was provided for test holes 1 and 2 as GM and SM soils were found. Groundwater was encountered in test holes 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Fill and regrading will be required to provide usable area. The petitioner has supplied a usable area map as seen at Exhibit D. An updated soils report will be required after all fill and regrading has been completed prior to recordation for each phase. This is seen at recommendation number 4. Based on Title 43-2281 of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Code, all lots will contain sufficient overall area. All lots have at least 10,000 square feet of usable building area. All lots have at least 10,000 square feet of contiguous usable septic area, or will once the specified fill and regrading has been completed. Topographic mapping and as-built were supplied and are seen at Exhibit B. Based on the supplied as-built, the structures existing on the parent parcel will need to be removed prior to recordation of the proposed Phase 2. This is shown at recommendation number 5. The preliminary drainage plan can be seen at Exhibit F. The conceptual water plan is at Exhibit G. A plan and profile was submitted for the proposed roads, and this is seen at Exhibit H. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers have no objections to the proposed design. The Matsu Borough Public Works Pre-Design and Engineering Division have the following comments. PD&E concurs with the ADT submitted by the petitioner. The fire hydrants should be placed at the right-of-way limits to facilitate winter snow plowing and storage. City of Palmer may require easements to facilitate maintenance. Platting staff notes that placement of fire hydrants will be handled at the pre-construction meeting as seen at recommendation 7B. PD&E requests water lines extend along the full frontage of lots served. Platting staff notes that all lots being serviced by City of Palmer Water will need the water lines to be fully installed prior to recordation. This is seen at recommendation number 6. PD&E suggests that a pathway be constructed connecting the northwestern cul-de-sac to Bogard Road, separated pathway. This is at recommendation number 8. At the southeast corner of the proposed development, extend the main southeasterly ending of North Hassan Bay Drive. Water main southeasterly, sorry, missed a word there. And this is seen at recommendation 7B. PD&E requests valve boxes be located 30 feet from the point of intersecting water lines, as seen at recommendation 7B. All structures inlaid into the pavement should be half-inch below pavement surface. Install key boxes at or beyond the edge of Matsu Borough right-of-way at recommendation 7B. Four slopes within the utility easement should be no steeper than 4-to-1. The petitioner to provide construction demolition plans for the existing retaining wall adjacent to the Bogard Road right-of-way prior to the pre-construction conference. This is seen at recommendation 7C. Within the clear zone of Bogard Road, the four slopes of the access road should be no steeper than 6-to-1. Sweep Bogard Road pathway in at the intersection with the access road per Alaska Standard Plan. Provide drainage retention area outside of Matsu Borough right-of-way as seen at recommendation 7G. Show how area with reduced ditch depth and 1.5-to-1 back slope fronting on Lot 8 and Lot 25 will meet the snow storage requirements of the SCM Section D04. And provide drainage easements across lots 23 and 24 to facilitate flow coming from Bogard Road culvert located in north of lots 23 and 24, and reaching the area of detention as seen at recommendation 7H. Platting staff notes that DPW's comments and recommendations will be resolved during the pre-construction conference that will be held between the Department of Public Works and the developer. Matsu Borough Planning Department has no objections to, but requests that sidewalks be added to the design. Platting staff notes that a connection from the interior streets to the existing Bogard bike path will be added as seen at recommendation 8. Matsu Borough Development Services notes that there is currently a non-permitted access onto North Hassan Bay Drive. Platting staff notes that this driveway will be removed once the access from the internal streets onto North Hassan Bay has been constructed. At the time the staff report was written, there were 3 comments received from the public in response to the notice of public hearing for the May 2nd hearing. One with no objections, one with concerns about the increased traffic and the cost of future road upgrades, and one objection due to the public noticing issue from the April 4th meeting, the timing of the May 2nd meeting, lack of sufficient access, added strain onto Hassan Bay and Laurel Street, as well as Arabian Lane, safety concerns due to the increased traffic, and the effect of the new development on property taxes. After the report was written, there have been 6 comments received from the public, and they are in your handout packet. 4 of these were objections based on the scheduling of the phases, noting that the access onto Bogard should be done in Phase 1. Lot sizes are too small and do not fit the neighborhood, no open or green space, number of septic systems in close proximity, noise and light pollution, development having already begun prior to approval from the Platting Board, and lack of zoning. 2 were concerns due to traffic increase on the side roads prior to the Bogard connection. The public comment issued from April 4th meeting, public comment issue, not issued, increased traffic and potential damage to the pond and wildlife in the surrounding area of Arabian Acres. There were 12 comments received from the public for the April 4th meeting, and these are seen at Exhibit K. 4 of the comments were objections, 8 were concerns. In conclusion, this case was continued from the April 4th, 2024 Platting Board meeting to allow for proper public noticing. The preliminary master plan of Bogard Colonial is consistent with state statutes and borough code. There were no objections received from any federal or state agencies, borough departments, or utilities. At the time the staff report was written, there were 3 comments received from the public in response to the notice of public hearing for the May 2nd meeting, 1 non-objection, 1 concern, and 1 objection. There were 6 comments received from the public after the staff report was written, 4 objections and 2 concerns. There were 12 comments received from the public for the April 4th meeting. 4 of these were objections, 8 were concerns. Legal and physical access will exist for all proposed lots once internal street construction has been completed. Frontage will exist for all lots. A soils report was submitted pursuant to code. Based on the submitted soils report, fill and regrading will be required prior to create usable area. An updated soils report will be required once fill and regrading has been completed prior to the recordation of the affected lots. All lots will utilize City of Palmer water. Installation and sign-off on the water system will need to be completed prior to recordation of each phase of the plat. Staff recommends approval with 9 findings of fact and 14 recommendations for conditions of approval.
Are there any questions from the board at this time? Mr. Goddard, finding of facts, do I have an updated sheet? You said there were 9.
If I did, I misspoke. There are 11 findings of fact with this and 14 recommendations of conditions of approval. So,
Thank you, sir.
my apologies.
If we have no further questions for the staff, I will open this to the applicants and applicant's representative. Come forward, state your name, sign the register, please. Pardon? Declined. We will move on to public comment. So at this point in time, I would like to open the floor for public comment. Please come forward, sign the register, and state your name, and turn on the microphone.
My name is Ron Conklin. I live at 2350 North Hassan Bay, right next door to the new construction that's going in the Platting Commission. I just heard that they will be removing the road when final construction. But right now, my main concern is that they put this road in with no culvert, where they're backing up standing water into my property. And when they put the road in, the ditch was there, and it channeled all the overflow from Hassan Bay Lake, or whatever, Arabian Lake, whatever you want to call it, that runs into the property. And now it's all backing up onto my property, and there's no culvert, and it's a mosquito breeding ground now. And I understand that we are all looking at the big picture here, but at the same time, there's no communication from the contractor with the people in the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Good afternoon. My name's Chuck Cossack. Before I start, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and board members for serving our community. I've served on many boards. It's a tough position at times. I'm a 42-year resident of Laurel Drive. I was not notified. I'm on the main access corridor into this development. In my 43-year professional career, it's involved development, construction, hydrology, and source water protection. Two primary concerns I have are the high-density development that is more suitable for municipal service system other than what's proposed. The first concern is the road system. The road system is 23 years old. It was designed for a life of 20 years. The worst section is Hassan Bay because of the base. There's large cracks. You can no longer crack seal that, and that's where the activity is being commenced. It's residentially identified as a Class 3 road for maintenance. That's the lowest maintenance in the borough. The increase of average daily traffic, ADT, to 72% is glaring, and it wasn't designed for this traffic load. Primary focus is water quality. We all know that the critical element in life is water. The proposed density is better suited for a municipal wastewater system. The main concern is significant deleterious effects on the wells downstream, and we're all on wells downstream. Typically, a contaminated aquifer takes 150 years to restore. That's 5 lifetimes, or 5 generations. So on the subsurface, there's no mention of potential contaminations. There's no hydrology assessment of the aquifer characteristics or the impacts on the aquifer. The concern is the high-intensity discharge into groundwater and the aquifer. Surficially underwater quality, under the drainage report, was mixed forest. It was clear-cut. That's not mixed forest. That's an erroneous calculation. Additionally, there are no hardened surface considerations in that drainage report. And with a high-density development, you have a lot more structures, you have a lot more runoff. I'm wary of the illegal discharge in the wetlands and the pond, Arabian Sun Park, from sheet drainage from the main access. I question the handling of the runoff via infiltrators. An environmental engineer would know they don't work, they're high to maintain. And with additional hardened surfaces, they're inappropriate. They'll work in Alaska, but not in Florida. In conclusion, there's no general construction permit filed, no SWIP nor NOI, that's of yesterday, confirmed with DEC. There's no solution on the runoff infiltration as per Public Works recommendations just read by this gentleman to provide drainage retentions outside the public right-of-way, because as planned, they're inside the public right-of-way. That means RSA 16 residents are on the dole for that. So I ask you for a moment, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, just consider purchasing a home or your kids or grandkids living immediately adjacent to or downstream of this development and being on well for water. I'll conclude with this. Due to this alone, I'm asking for a request to continuance until all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, and all social and economic costs to subdivision residents are quantified and considered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Bill Wiedeker, 120260 Scott Road, and I already sent in my comments through the mail, but what drew me in here to speak was the public input part of the hearing. You know, it's a public hearing, but yet I see the roads are already in, the house sites are being prepared now, and they were burying lines and stuff. And it doesn't seem like the public has any input. I think on the last hearing, one of the board members commented that as long as the petitioners meet the minimum of the borough code, it's a done deal. And so I don't know, it sounds to me like this was a done deal before it even began. And, over the years, I've had a number of these I've commented on, and, thinking that my input might have something to do with the decisions made, and it doesn't seem like it does. It'd be nice to have a little notice or something that, whatever we say doesn't matter. And I think that we need some planning in the borough. I don't know if the planning board can go back to the planning commission or go to the assembly and ask for some more power to do something. It doesn't sound like the planning board has any power to object to this, but I just have my concerns that it's already a done deal. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for those comments.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. My name's Joel Stefanski. I'm at 2251 North Hassan Bay. I've been there for 37 years. As you can see in the map on Exhibit A5, you can see the lots average anywhere from 1 to 7 acres. I bought that house with my wife in 1987 for $72,000. The borough has it assessed at $500,000 now. Thank you, guys. And but with that said, I want to give you guys a little history lesson. The two great men that created that subdivision, Bob Swift and Larry Russett. Late 70s, they developed that. Those guys were men of integrity, honesty, and they were good Alaskan men. And it wasn't about greed. And you can see the size of the lots. They could have maximized their return, but they didn't. They built a quality subdivision, and it wasn't over greed. And that's why most of us that are in this room here, most of us now are getting close to retired or already retired. We got grandkids, and we bought those lots because of the beauty and the foresight of those two great men. And now we got this going in there, and eventually the city of Palmer will probably annex that eventually, and plus us. That's the ultimate plan. But there's several flaws. You always try to set yourself up for success in life, and we're not setting ourselves up for success. And I hate that Z word. I've been a contractor for 40 years in this valley. But it's when people go above and beyond doing the wrong thing. And that's where we're at. We're not setting ourselves up for success here, guys and ladies. What I'd like to see, when Bogart Extension went in 2007, we had a lot of public hearings, and the whole idea of the Bogart Extension was to eliminate traffic on the Palmer-Wasilla Highway. But what are we doing now? We're making it go through Hassan Bay, is that correct? Out to Palmer-Wasilla Highway? Or have we changed that?
It's got both, one to Hassan Bay and one to Beauregard.
Yeah, the solution, we're not asking for the stars, we're asking for a piece of the moon here. Because we're originally told when Beauregard would go in, remember, the borough built that road for the state. The state gave over the authorization to the borough to build Beauregard Road. Okay, and we were told no access roads would ever come in on Beauregard. And at the time, I was against it, but now I see the traffic flow takes it off the Palmer-Wasilla Highway. But now what we're doing, we're dumping vehicles back on the Palmer-Wasilla Highway by going through Hassan Bay. What I'd like to do is a simple thing. I want a piece of the moon, not the stars. I like to see the access, both go out, two accesses go out on Beauregard Road. And I think the engineer, whoever that is in this room, who's the engineer? You? Surveyor, okay. I think his traffic numbers are flawed. based on, we only got 6 houses at 70 cars right now. Yeah, well, he had 10 minutes, so I'd like to have as much time as he has. So I'd like to think about the traffic flow. Number one, the Palm Wasilla Highway coming from 49th Street towards Palmer is illegal. That's why they have it at 45 miles an hour. The line of sight, proper legal line of sight's not there. So I need to have you guys go out and look at that 45 mile an hour sign. And that's a very dangerous. I've been there 37 years. I've seen all kinds of car accidents. So now we're gonna put basically up to 600, 700 cars, not 400.
Sir,
It's a
please
700 cars.
please don't take advantage of my generosity. I've given you an extra minute. I'd like
And
to
but
hear you.
I said, we're just asking for a piece of the moon, not the stars. Put the access out on Beauregard where it belongs, and we can deal with the rest. We're very happy where we live, and that's all we're asking. We're not asking much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I believe we'll go online next. We have someone online would like to speak. Have they pressed R3, Fred?
I will unmute them now.
All right, online, please, name and,
Thank you. My name is Rachel Greenberg. I'm actually not in the subdivision. I'm in the neighboring community council, in the Lakes Community Council area, and I'm concerned if I guess my question is whether or not there's been a study of the impact of having an additional, 58 new homes and all the traffic involved. Going on to Beauregard, we've already got a major problem along Beauregard with lots of accidents. And I want to just make sure that the studies and the impact of the roads have been addressed in, this whole corridor as the subdivision is developed. I don't know if this study's been done. We know that we've already got a problem on Beauregard, and I just want to have that taken into consideration. Thank you for your time.
thank you. Anyone else online? Mr. Wagner?
There are other members online, but nobody has raised their hand yet.
Okay, if you are online, would like to speak to Beauregard Colonial MSP, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you. If not, I'm going to move back to public testimony in-house. Seeing none, more testimony from in-house. Please come forward, state your name. Okay, seeing none, we will close public testimony at this time. Would the applicant's representative like to come back to the podium?
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Hansen, representing the petitioner, WM Construction. I guess I will address a few of the comments that have been made this afternoon. First off, regarding the culvert and the need for one at the end of the road when the road goes on to Hassan Bay. It's in the design. We've got an entire drainage plan. It's not constructed yet because construction is not complete yet. There will be a culvert there. With regards to sheet flow and the need for a construction general permit, none of that is true. We do not need a construction general permit because there is no discharge into waters of the U.S. There will be no sheet flow into the lake across the road, which is incidentally is not a wetland, because there's a road blocking such sheet flow. And finally, as for the great men, those that created a subdivision 30 years ago or whatever it was, they, just like the guys that are developing today, were dealing with the economic realities of what we're faced with here in the valley. Now, they were able to create a large lot and sell it to the gentleman that testified for $90,000. Does anybody here know what's happened to the price of lots in the valley? And does anybody here really want their kids to be able to buy a house? Well, I can tell you, at the current economic conditions, they're not going to be able to buy a house if they have a 3-acre lot. We'd all like that. That'd be grand. But the people that are actually building houses and developing, they're faced with the economic realities of what can be done, and done so in a way that will allow them to make a living. And that's all I got to say about that. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Do the board, do you have any questions for Mr. Hanson? Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Yes, Mr. Steve, or Craig, you, one of the speakers, one of the objections last time we were here was sight distance coming onto Bogard. And I drove that this morning, and it looks like the gabion wall where the access is going to be provided comes out on a crest. So there's no sight condition problem that I see there at all. So, but my question was, I came from 49th State Street down Bogard, and it looked like there was another access that was prepared to come on to Bogard. Was that your subdivision?
No, I'm not sure what it is you're seeing. Perhaps it's that cul-de-sac that's in the northwest corner. That comes close to the road, but it doesn't access.
Can you speak up, please?
I'm not certain what it was you're seeing, but the answer is no. There's no other access onto Bogard Road. Perhaps there is a cul-de-sac up in the northwest corner that's part of this subdivision, and that, that does come close to Bogard, but there is no access there for the road.
That must be what I was saying. It looked like the same kind of preparation to come on to Bogard, but okay. That was my main question there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Any other questions for Mr. Hanson from the board?
Yeah, I have one question.
Mr.
There's one person here that said that the going out onto Hassan Drive there, that doesn't meet code per the subdivision construction manual, and they cited a AO 4.2, I think, which we talked about a little bit later. Does that play in here at all? Because I'm trying to understand this a little bit better, because it does look like to me it's a thorough, comes from off Bogard, you drive right through onto Hassan Road, and people could shortcut through there. I don't know if that's the plan of what you want it to do. And also, I understand the concerns of the residents out there of loading up more traffic onto Hassan Road and coming out down there on Palmer-Wasilla Highway, or people coming up that way. So limiting the access into the subdivision might help out a little bit. But I just want to address this. Are we still in code per A 04.2? And should I read it to you? Or
if the question is directed to me, I would simply say yes, it does. We had to work through that. That section of road between Bogard and Hassan Bay, that in itself could contain the traffic as all a residential road. The code you spoke of, I believe, references just subcollector roads. Therefore, it doesn't pertain. The real issue at hand here is we've got conflicting goals. The fact is the subdivision construction manual, the platting, Title 43, there's an underlying idea that we want interconnectivity. So then when we come and we develop one of these, design one of these subdivisions, we're forced to try to have interconnectivity, the idea being for safety. That's why you see these roads. That's why we have, like the case before me, when the developer didn't want to put it in, they had to go for variance just to not make that interconnectivity. The interconnectivity and the safety of that is what really pushes these through roads being made. And it's, our hands are tied with regards to that.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Burtz? Are there any other questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Hanson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
From the board, I would entertain a motion in a second to put this on the table for discussion. Do I hear one? Someone's gonna have to make a motion. We need to put this up, to get it under discussion, so. Ms. Krieger, am I looking to you?
I'll go ahead and read it. Suggested motion, I move to approve the preliminary master plan of Bogard Colonial, Section 36, Township 18 North, Range 01 East, Seward Meridian, Alaska, contingent on staff recommendations.
And do I have a second?
I
That is,
second the
staff
motion.
recommendations, 1 through 14, and finding the facts 1 through 11. So, Ms. Krieger, is that a second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's open the floor for our discussion among the board. Please weigh in.
Well, I'll just weigh in my general thoughts. I know that this all meets borough code, but being a resident of Alaska a long time, I also understand that 58 lots on that small with septic systems could cause a problem. But once again, we're dealing with law, and law says you can do it. I don't like that. I don't like overloading the roads. I don't like the additional accesses on the Bogart. I've driven down that road quite a bit myself, and it's a traffic jam already. And, you know, I guess it's overall long-term planning that we're looking at to make these things suitable to have high-density lots like this. I think we need a septic, a public septic system put in to handle the septic, because we're looking at high density like we're looking at within a city. But once again, I guess it all goes to law, so, you know, I'm wavering how I would vote on this. In other words, I don't care for it.
Thank you, Mr. Burtz. Comments? Well, seeing none from the board, I'm going to have to reflect a lot of Mr. Burtz's feelings. This is a tough decision. I'm going to tell you, we're bound by law, by state statute and borough code. And I think it was pointed out lots of times here that if we're going to make any changes here, it needs to start probably with the assembly rather than this body right here. I read these concerns, and there's lots of them, and I read them over twice. I really take public comment seriously. I do believe that the people's will should be spoken, but the people's will spoken through state statute and borough code, and I feel bound to support that, although I myself see this as high density. I travel Bogart practically weekly on multiple occasions, and I know what it's going to do there, but I feel between a rock and a hard place, and I have no decision but to approve this. And I know it's not going to make a lot of people happy, but me personally, I have no choice but to follow state law and borough statute. So my word is we need to start prior to this board if we're going to make some changes in our borough, and our borough is growing. So that's all I have to say. Mr. Wagner, anything from the planning department? Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Yeah, we talked earlier about the road classifications and how it applies to the construction manual. What I understand is that these are residential streets, and a residential subcollector are streets are local roads that carry more traffic than residential streets. So once you access Hanson Drive, does that make that a residential subcollector street? So it's kind of a, you know, what comes first? Does the objection to through traffic in the construction manual apply? Because it's now turned into a residential sub-collector street? I'd like Fred to expound on that if he could.
Okay, so through the chair, this is Fred Wagner, Platting Officer. So the roads within the subdivision themselves are going to be residential. So the road in question that we're talking about mainly there, so that meets the SCM, so 4.2 doesn't apply there. We don't anticipate a change by the numbers from the traffic count in the functional classification of either Hassan Bay Drive or Laurel. So they remain within the local road classifications that are being used as their functional classifications cover both residential and residential sub. But as I recall, the numbers do not, let me look at it before I speak erroneously. Yeah, they don't, I mean, we're looking at 390 where it meets the Palmer-Wasilla Highway, and that's still 10 under a residential road. So the concern, the traffic doesn't raise them even from a residential to a residential sub along Hassan Bay or along Laurel. So it has not been a concern to us to upgrade the road, or it's not a requirement, excuse me, to upgrade the road.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Bush?
So the traffic count is under the 400, it's at 390, and that was just for the subdivision itself. I mean, are they adding any through
This is adding in the new traffic from, by the traffic count supplied, the ADT, the ADT supplied, they're showing new traffic, the new count at Laurel and the Palmer-Wasilla Highway to be 390, which would still keep the classification of a residential road, as the subdivision construction manual classifies them. There's a little discrepancy between what the Department of Public Works calls a local road and then our subdivision roads. Like I said, the local roads by DPW standard incorporate both the residential and the residential sub. And then the subdivision construction manual has a breakdown of residential sub, and then a residential collector road, which is a type of minor collector road. So, clear as mud.
If I may, Mr. Wagner, I have one question. So this traffic study was provided by Alaska DOT? So
Negative. Through the chair, the traffic study is done by the petitioner's engineer at their cost. DOT doesn't, it's not that type of a, they don't provide that feature for us at that.
So now my question to you, Mr. Wagner, is, let's say 2 years down the road after this is going to be a while before this subdivision is all built out, it's 4 phases. Will there be additional traffic studies at some point in time? Will anything trigger additional traffic studies to maybe cause some of these roads to be upgraded? Can you answer that question?
I really can't answer that question because it wouldn't be related to this subdivision. If the road in the future, this reflects what full build out would be in this traffic report here. If traffic increases from other locations or other developments and they result in the road needing to be upgraded, this is a borough maintained road. Since this project doesn't upgrade its functional use, the developer is not required to fund that. It's a borough accepted and maintained road. The borough pays for maintenance along this road. So if it needs upgrade, it will be the borough's responsibility. That's why when we accept a road for maintenance and we hold it through a warranty period and all that, that's to make sure that we're getting a road that we can own and we will be responsible from there forth to maintain. And then the RSA taxes are where the maintenance comes from for upgrades of roads when they aren't, when a development doesn't cause the change in functional use.
Thank you. I think that pretty much clarifies it. I guess then any future road upgrades would have to go through the long-range transportation plan and be put on basically put on the road priority.
I believe, excuse me, through the chair, Fred Wagner, Platting Officer again. I believe the way it is the RSA puts in requests for roads that they want to upgrade or they feel they need to, and then the bidding, if found necessary, they put out for bid. And the roads, I think the RSAs rank their roads, and they try to get the ones they need first done, and
Thank you, Mr. Wagner, and I asked for that clarification. It really has nothing to do with our decision here, but I just wanted for future information. Any more discussion among the board or any questions? I'm sorry, public comment is closed, ma'am. Are we ready to vote? Okay, I see some heads. You know, this has been contentious. Madam Clerk, I'm hesitant to just ask for consent. I would like to take this to a full vote, if that's acceptable with the board.
It is.
Are you ready to turn on the vote? And as soon as Madam Clerk says we're ready, we will vote.
theoretically, we got the electronic board working. It's been a while since it's worked correctly, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay, go ahead and make your vote.
Madam Clerk, would you read the vote count, please?
Yes, there are 4 no votes and 3 yes votes.
So the request fails.
We will need to, the planning board members will need to craft findings for denial.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Give us a time frame on that, and we'll move on to the next case after we find out what we're doing here. Time frame for denial.
The members, well, we have until we get them done. We can't move on until you have crafted findings for denials, and so you have to give the basis that you use to say no.
Can we do that verbally, or does it need to be in writing?
You'll probably have to do it through discussion, and we'll work on writing them.
Okay, Madam Clerk, pay attention. You're going to have to keep the notes. And this is a situation I, as chair, haven't been in, but I know this was a very contentious plat, so I'm going to call on each member down the row and to give your thoughts. I think that's the only fair way to do it. Looking towards the board, towards Mr. Goodman. Brian, I'm going to start with you.
The borough has been put into an interesting situation with high-density platting and plotting. The area of concern, in my opinion, is that the traffic of this area, especially in proximity to the schools, you have a number of feeders in this general vicinity, is going to cause a traffic concern. The height and safety of this corridor is, if you've traveled it, is in question, in my opinion. I really don't like being put in this position just simply because we're telling people what they can and cannot do with their land. So if I come to your house and I tell you what you can do with your land, you're probably going to have something to say about that. I've lived in this valley since '73, so I share your concerns. This board is struck by code, and unless we improve the code that this board is given to work within, we can only blame ourselves.
Mr. Wagner?
Through the chair, and actually a question for Mr. Goodman. You've voted in the negative. So, I mean, but you didn't, you kind of gave findings to support passing it. I didn't see where those findings that you gave were supporting a no vote.
No, I believe you did. This is a real fine line. I agree with you, Fred. The code that we have and the code that we support would say to pass this. The public support, and I agree with Gary regarding the size of the lots. I need to dig into the codes regarding high-density population housing. I've seen that happen multiple places and multiple times throughout the valley. And I guess as a board member, I can't support the I can't support it, and that's just my personal opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Mr. Burtz?
Okay, concerns I have is the possibility of the studies as far as the groundwater. I'm sure that there are some wells adjacent to these lots that maybe only be 30, 40 foot deep. And I would have concern if all the wells were 200 foot deep or more. I wouldn't have such a concern. I don't know what they are, but there just hasn't been, to me, enough study on the effects of what's going to happen with 58 septic systems dumping into this. I also have concern with the traffic numbers. That wasn't done by what I want to call a registered third party, I guess, okay? Sorry for lack of words. So the numbers could be easily skewed. And because of the public comment on that, I think we need to be assured that those numbers are correct. If we didn't have any public comment on it, I would probably ignore it. But because of public comment, I think that we need to make sure those numbers are correct before we press on. And I think what I'm looking for is minor. Just give me some better study that guarantee me that that groundwater is not going to be affected for other people's wells. I don't know how you're going to do that. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm looking for something that would, I wouldn't want my well contaminated. I know that. Okay, so that's my input.
Mr. Burtz, thank you. Yes, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. Just for all board members, this is going to go a lot better if you can state the area of code that you're opposed to, because I'll tell you, we deal with facts, not feelings. And I'm hearing feelings, and I'm not hearing subdivision construction manual section such, or borough code related to area such and such is being violated. We don't have requirements to study groundwater. We have a requirement to supply usable area reports, and that's, water, it's just not something we have. It's not, we can't start adding conditions that aren't in code. I mean, requests for these, again, need to come from the assembly down. These findings of fact need to be based in code. They need to be findings of facts, not findings of feelings. So if you have something that you're opposed to, I really need you to spell it out in your findings of fact for the staff, for the conditions moving forward, for what most likely will be an appeal by the petitioner. If you do not meet if you don't find areas of code that are in violation with this proposal, it will be appealed. And I don't know if it'll be, I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. I think that was well put. Ms. Krieger, your objections, please?
I voted no because I wanted this discussion to be heard by all of you here in this room. Our job is to make sure that code is met. Yes, the code has been met as it is written today. We all understand that we don't always agree with the code, but we cannot base our decisions on feelings alone. Until the borough is willing to start talking about land use and zoning, there is nothing that we can do about this. We have to make sure that these subdivisions meet the code as it is written here today. Mr. Chair, may I change my vote?
Yes, ma'am, I will ask for reconsideration. After we've gone through, we've got one more nay, and I need to hear from Mr. Bush, and I was going to ask for
I
reconsideration.
agree that the septic is a problem, that it could be a problem, a potential problem. I did drive down into this neighborhood personally, and yes, we've all seen this happen to other neighborhoods. But as code is written today, this does follow the book.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we're supposed to assure that the code is correct, that it's followed, the code is followed. And in this case, I think the ADT, the average daily traffic, is flawed. I drove down Arabian Acres today, and I think there's gonna be a lot of through traffic coming through the subdivision, just to shortcut over to Hanson Road. So the 390 that it's just barely under the requirement is, I think that's flawed. However, I wouldn't mind changing my vote too and continuing this and having maybe that ADT looked at by uninterested third party. That would satisfy me for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. So we've asked for reconsideration by two people. I would like Madam Clerk to clear the board. Mr. Bush, I'm not inclined to ask for an extension of this. This has been extended once, and I believe that it's incumbent upon the borough, when they receive requests, to act upon them thoroughly and expediently. Mr. Bush?
Yeah, if we can't continue, then I'm gonna keep my vote negative.
Fair enough, sir. Mr. Wagner?
You would need a motion, and then you would need a vote supporting a reconsideration as well. So you'd have to have a motion for a reconsideration and then approving vote.
Okay, that will happen. So I guess I will open up for a motion for reconsideration.
I move that we reconsider the vote.
Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Halford. Any objection to reconsideration of the vote? Madam Clerk, would you prepare for the electronic vote, please?
It is ready for a vote.
And on reconsideration, the vote does pass.
That actually brings the reconsideration now. I guess that, never mind, that works.
Well, we have just passed this, so postponement is, that was not the motion on the table. So this has been one of the toughest cases that we've had to hear, and I'm sure that's why we're here. I think that I won't take up too much time, but I think that the discussion on this case shows the need that you need to get a hold of your assembly people, and if you don't believe that we don't have zoning in the borough, but if we need more land use, that needs to come through the assembly, not through this board. We must follow state statute and borough code.
Only one question. If somebody gets sick because you polluted our water, I'm suing you.
That, that,
You're not taking into consideration, you say point of law, here's a point of law. You can't poison people, and you don't have the studies to back up. And you said you can't do anything about water, but they're tapping into the groundwater.
that's your option, sir. Give me just a minute to clear paperwork, and we'll move on to Nordic Park 2. Sir, I'm sorry, that's out of order. Public comment is closed on Bogart Colonial. Yes, Madam Clerk, please clear the board. Okay, the next item before the board is Nordic Park 2. The request is to create 4 tracts from Tract A and B, Nordic Park, plat number 2021-44, and Government Lot 22, Tax Parcel D4, Section 36, and to vacate a portion of the right-of-way of North Nordic Lane to be known as Nordic Park 2, containing 96.65 acres plus or minus. Parcels are located north of North Nancy Lake Parkway, east of Suncrest Lake, and south of Rainbow Lake, southeast of North Rainbow Shore Drive, and accessed by North Nordic Lane, tax ID number 8123000 Tango 00 Alpha Tango 00 Bravo, and 19 North 05 West 36 Delta 002. This is lying within Section 36, Township 19 North, Range 05 West, Seward Meridian, Alaska, in the Willow Arrow Community Council and Assembly District Number 7. Madam Clerk, public notices?
There was 36 public notices mailed March 28th, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And to the board. Do you or any member of your immediate family have a substantial financial interest in any property affected by this decision? Or will you recognize a foreseeable profit as a result of this decision? Hearing seen none. Have you received or otherwise engaged in ex parte contact with the applicant, other parties interested in the application, or members of the public concerning the application or issues presented in this application, either before the application or during any period of time the matter was submitted for decision, outside of the public process provided by the borough? Hearing seen none, are you able to be impartial in this decision? And the answer is affirmative. And may I have staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This case was continued from the April 18th, 2024 Platting Board hearing to allow time for proper posting of the vacation, which has now been completed. The platting action is creating 4 large tracts. The petitioner requests a vacation of a portion of North Nordic Lane, which will create a T turnaround within the rights-of-way of North Nordic Lane and North Royce Drive. Tract E and F are flag lots with a common access easement that will provide access to all 4 lots. Proposed common access easement is shown on the plat. You can find a topographic narrative at Exhibit B. You can find a petition for the vacation of the right-of-way at Exhibit C. Assembly approval of the vacations is required. See recommendation number 1. Petitioner is required to post and maintain notification of the vacations for 30 days prior to the public hearing. The posting notice was done on March 31st, 2024, and that posting affidavit can be found in your handout number 1. This parcel has equal access, as the request is only to vacate a portion of the right-of-way, Access to the 100-foot wide section line easement on the south boundary is provided by the 60-foot and 80-foot wide public use easement of North Royce Drive. There is a 100-foot wide public use easement from North Norick Lane to the 50-foot wide public use easement for access to the southern tip of Rainbow Lake. Land and Resource Management Division has no objection. A public easement, access easement, 50-foot wide in width, upland from and along the ordinary high water mark of the unnamed lake, which is known as Upper Rhine Lake, was reserved in deed. Easement is to be shown on the final plat. See recommendation number 5. This staff notes that the surveyor is aware of the requirement for inclusion of the easement on the final plat. In conclusion, the preliminary plat of Nordic Park Number 2 is consistent with Alaska statute and Borough Code. Vacation of a portion of the right-of-way of North Nordic Lane is consistent with Borough Code. There are no objections from any federal or state agencies, borough departments, or utilities. There were no objections from the public in response to the notice of public hearing. Legal and physical access does exist. Frontage exists, and a soils report was not required, as a detailed topographic narrative was submitted by the surveyor. Therefore, staff recommends approval with 8 findings of fact and 7 recommendations of conditions of approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board for the staff? Hearing seen none, I will ask the representative to come forward, please.
Gary LaRusso with Keystone Surveying, representing the petitioners. I have no comment at this point.
Thank you, Mr. LaRusso. I would like to open public testimony on Nordic Park Number 2. Is there anyone in the room that would like to testify? Mr. Wagner, is there anyone online that would like to testify on Nordic Park Number 2?
We have no callers on.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll close public testimony and we will invite Mr. LaRusso to come back.
You must have a Nordic track at home.
Yeah, it's a good clothes hanger.
Yeah, right. I don't have much to say. Track C, if you look at your Exhibit A1, Track C is owned by Mr. Royce, who's one of the petitioners, and the remainder of the property is owned by the 3 of them jointly. This is going to allow them to split the property up. And if you notice the way I drew the lines, I try to think ahead and protect people from themselves. So it's like, okay, well, if they ever decide to do something, what would make sense for a road? And so where the property lines, they're curvilinear and so forth, would be where future roads would be the most logical at some point if they ever decide to do it. So I have nothing else to say. If you, any comments or questions or.
Yeah, I got a question. I guess I'm not quite understanding. Do we still have access to this Upper Rhine Lake? There's a 50-foot public access around it. Is there still access to that public access?
Where the access isn't changing to that at all. No, we're not changing anything there. No. There was a, yeah, there's an easement I need to show on here. That shows the 50-foot, but it does show on here. So we're not taking anything away. Yeah.
Any more questions from the board? Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. LaRusso, why are we vacating or wishing to vacate the right-of-way? I don't
Public
understand.
Works actually requested that.
Beg pardon?
Public Works requested that on the pre-application. I had no thought on it originally, but there is a, you know, in the construction manual, you're only supposed to have roads so far before you have to build a cul-de-sac. And that would have caused construction of a road, building of a cul-de-sac. The borough would have had to maintain it, and I'm guessing that's why Public Works suggested, why don't you just vacate it back? So that's what we were doing. It was in the pre-application, which I don't think it's part of your packet. Is that correct? Okay. It was a request from Public Works.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, Mr. LaRusso.
Any more questions for Mr. LaRusso? Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion on Nordic Park 2.
I move to approve the preliminary plat of Nordic Park 2 and the vacation of a portion of the right-of-way of North Nordic Lane, Section 36, Township 19 North, Range 05 West, Seward Meridian, Alaska, contingent on staff recommendations 1 through 7 and findings of fact 1 through 8.
Thank you, Ms. Krieger. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Cohn, thank you. Is there any discussion on this among the board? Seeing and hearing none, is there an objection to approving this plat request? Seeing and hearing none, the request is approved unanimously. Okay, the next matter to come before this board is a Hidden Jewel. The request is to create 5 lots from tax parcel C10, tax ID 17 North 02 Echo 10 Charlie 010, containing 10 acres plus or minus. The proposed lots are located directly north of South Jewel Street, west of North River Rock Circle, and east of East Pace Drive, located within the southwest quarter of Southeast Quarter, Southwest Quarter, Section 10, Township 17 North, Range 02 East, Seward Meridian, Alaska, in the Greater Palmer Community Council area and in Assembly District 2. Madam Clerk, mailings?
There was 140 public notices mailed April 8th, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And to the board. Do you or any member of your immediate family have a substantial financial interest in any property affected by this decision, or will you recognize a foreseeable profit as a result of this decision? Seeing none. Have you received or otherwise engaged in ex parte contact with the applicant, other parties interested in the application, or members of the public concerning the application or issues presented in this application, either before the application period or during any period of time the matter is submitted for decision, outside of the public process provided by the borough? Hearing seen none. Final question, are you able to be impartial in this decision? Hearing seen none, thank you. May we have the staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed subdivision will be creating 4 lots and 1 tract from tax parcel C10 and extending South Jewel Street to end in a temporary cul-de-sac. The proposed lots will range in size from 0.95 to 1 acre, with the remainder tract containing 5.6 acres. Access for all lots will be by the proposed extension of South Jewel. Access requirements will be met once interior street and cul-de-sac have been constructed. A geotechnical report was submitted by Curtis Holler based on available soil and water table information, topography, MSB Title 43 code definitions, and their observations at the site. The 4 new lots and remainder Tract A will each contain over 10,000 square feet of contiguous usable septic area and an additional 10,000 square feet of usable building area. Topographic map and as-built are shown on the agenda plat. Preliminary drainage plan is at Exhibit B3. Average daily traffic calculations are at Exhibit C. Plan and profile was not required. For comments, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers sent information on on dredging and fill material if needed. DPW PD&E has no comment. Permit Center noticed a existing structure, driveway needs to have a permit. This is recommendation number 5. Utilities, Instar requested an easement with conditions. These are recommendation number 6. At the time of the write-up, there were no responses to the request for comments from ADF&G, Road Service Area 16, South Colony, MSB Emergency Services, Community Development Assessment Planning, or the public. That we did get public comments, and they are in your handouts after this report was written. In conclusion, the preliminary plat of Hidden Jewel is consistent with AS 294070 platting regulations and MSB 431516 preliminary plats. There were no objections from any federal or state agencies, borough departments, or utilities. We did get an objection after this was written from the public, which is in the handouts. Staff recommends approval of Hidden Jewel with these 7 findings of fact and 9 conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Curlin. Are there any questions for the staff from the board? Hearing and seeing none, is the petitioner or the petitioner's representative would like to come forward?
Gary LaRusso, Keystone Surveying, and Reginald Carney's in the back of the room. At this point, I just, as an overview, just say we agree with the recommendations as proposed.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I would like to open the floor for public testimony. Anyone in the room that would like to make public testimony on Hidden Jewel? Mr. Wagner or anyone? Oh, come forward, please. Nobody online? Okay. Sign the register and state your name,
Can
please.
you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
You got to be this close. Most of you guys aren't, and I can't hear half what you're saying. My name is Jim Burnham. I own lots 5 and 6 off of East O'Malley, which is next to Jewel. A lot of building back in that area. It's a nice area. The next 2 properties, this one and Wisteria, which I think was coming up next, are going to increase the traffic in that area quite a bit, especially the Wisteria. The 2 drawings that I have out here don't look like they agree to me. A little bit different. I would say that Hidden Jewel, C10, should really get their access from Outer Springer. When they put the access in, there's a cul-de-sac right now between lots 1 and 7 in Colony East. When they put that in, it increased traffic, and when they put Wisteria in, or if they put Wisteria in, it's going to cause a lot more traffic. Currently, the school bus will not stop except out here at the corner of Outer Springer. It will not come back and serve any of the lots or properties that are any further back in Colony East, with Hidden Jewel, or Wisteria. Also, by not coming off of Outer Springer. It increases the driving distance by about 4 times. It's about 400% further to get back there. South of it, where traffic map is wooded. And there's a wooded strip along the river. These are fire hazards in the springtime. And by only having one way out of there, we're making a fire trap that could possibly be dangerous. So I'm worried about that. I'm worried about the school and increased traffic. It says traffic count. Well, it's subdivision down by the river, so traffic is so-so. They've done a lot of building back there since I moved in. I remember when there was one car went around in a week that passed my house, and that's not so anymore. It's kind of unrealistic to expect it to be that way forever. But really increasing the traffic back here is not nearly as important as being able to get a school bus back there. So I think that the whole picture is not being shown on the traffic count map. They really need to check the access either from Rocky Point subdivision, which is right by the river, about 200 feet away, or one of the other access roads that go back that way, which would only be a few hundred feet away. These are considerations that it doesn't sound like people doing the developing have thought about. I'd like to see that thought about before this got approved. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Burnham. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to come forward, please sign the register and state your name?
Thank you. My name is Martin George. I actually live off of DePriest in the Glenview subdivision. I'm on lot 5. My concern is the same as Jim's, is the amount of traffic we're going to see. But it's the unforeseen traffic before we approve this, that there is no zoning. Learned that today in the borough. So if you Hidden Jewel ended up, that other 5 acres there ended up as fourplexes, condos, and the access was coming down into the subdivision again, at what point do we see hundreds of cars versus what they're saying is 5 according to the number? That's going to be way different than 5. That's going to be 200 cars a day going past my house. So I know there's no code for what they can build in there, because once this is platted, build away whatever you want. I haven't been here that long.
You still have time, sir.
So that being said, my concern is traffic. I've already talked to the borough about getting some speed limit signs in there. There is 2 speed limit signs on that road. There has to be better than that. the troopers have already told me, we're probably not gonna write a ticket, we're gonna write a warning, unless it's flagrant. So, is the developer responsible for getting the signs up and getting things right, or is it the borough? The borough's not developing a subdivision, so that's my question is, before this goes any farther, decide who that's gonna be. My other concern is, I got a public notice for Hidden Jewel, okay? That's state law and borough code, right? I did not get a notice for Wisteria Edition 1, which is today. I did not get a notice for Wisteria, which was 2 months ago. I should have got a notice. I don't, because Hidden Jewel ties right into Wisteria. They're not that far. It's not another 200 feet. It's a lot line. That's how far the difference is. So to me, it can't be the distance I am from there that I didn't get a public notice. So I would like the board to find out why I didn't get a notice. I've talked to other people in the subdivision that did not get a notice also, that are within that subdivision. So someplace, something got dropped. The only other thing that I talked to the borough about was having some type of, something in the road that slows people down, besides my granddaughter's bicycle. That's about the only thing that's worked so far. She's not on it, by the way. But that's all we can do is put signs up, right? Speed bumps, fire department doesn't like them, road graders don't like them. But there has to be some plan of how to slow people down. Any questions for me?
Thank you for your comment, sir.
Oh, I do have one more thing.
Okay.
So the Wisteria map that got put out with this edition 1.
I would like to defer that to Wisteria to the next case.
I'll wait till that.
Yes, and we'll invite you back. Thank you, sir.
And then, the last thing I have is, I don't know all the details of interconnectivity. So with only one access out of this subdivision, how does the borough's ordinance read on that? I couldn't find it. And then they had mentioned in the borough codes that I did find searching the internet, it mentioned ADT. I don't know what ADT is, but it has something to do with traffic control as best I could tell. But like Jim said, one access, that's not good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward and weigh in on Hidden Jewel? And there was no one online, Mr. Wagner? There's no one. All right, I will see no more. I will close public testimony. And Mr. LaRusso, would you like to come back and address us?
I'm here, Gary LaRusso with Keystone Surveying. Petitioner still in the back of the room. I just want to address a couple things that were said and about access to Rocky Point. There is no access to Rocky Point. That goes across private property. And the other road must have been Pace Drive, I guess the gentleman was speaking of, and that's private property. That's people's property. There's no right-of-way there. You can't just build roads across people's property. Other than that, I really don't have anything unless y'all have some questions. I know there was talk of the school bus, and school buses don't go down side streets. I live on a loop. I always wish they went around my loop. It would have been easy. They don't do it. I don't know if it's economics or, I don't know why. Because they did when I was little. They picked kids up where they should have got picked up. And my mother told me not to play in the street, kind of thing. But anyways, I'll take questions if there's questions.
Any questions from the board? Hearing seen none. Mr. LaRusso, thank you very much. To the board, I would entertain a motion on Hidden Jewel. Ms. Krieger.
I move to approve the preliminary plat of Hidden Jewel, Section 10, Township 17 North, Range 2 East, Seward Meridian, Alaska, contingent on staff recommendations 1 through 9, and findings and facts 1 through 7.
And do I have a second? Mr. Burt, second. Is there a discussion among the board on Hidden Jewel, the request for plat? Mr. Wagner.
Just a point, we looked this up because we know how we, our little shell, you know, we're a little scared of notification. I did look it up. Mr. George, your property is 1,700 feet away from the Wisteria property. The borough notification has to go out to 1,200 feet. So that's why you didn't receive anything for Wisteria, but you were within that for this particular case. So just want to let you know, we got notices out as they were supposed to go out. And no, the public portion is closed. If you wish to discuss it with me later, you know how to get in touch with me, or you can come up and talk to me in my office as well. So, Mr. George and I play hockey together, so.
Okay.
I'm expecting a puck in the back now. No.
At least you know it's coming.
I was expecting that before. He loves shooting on those angle shots.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Any discussion anymore among the board members? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are we ready for a vote? Is there any objection to passing the request for plat for Hidden Jewel? Hearing and seeing none, this plat request unanimously is passed. Okay, moving on to the last request, and we will be through here, so the assembly won't have to kick us out. Next case before us is Wisteria Meadows, edition number 1. The request is to create 10 lots from tax parcel C11, tax ID number 17 North 02 Echo 10 Charlie 011, to be known as Wisteria Meadows Edition 1, containing 20 acres plus or minus. The proposed lots are located directly north of South Mary Street, west of North River Rock Circle, and east of South Gunnysack Road, located within the southwest quarter, southeast quarter, southwest quarter, section 10, township 17 North, range 02 East, Seward Meridian, Alaska, in the Greater Palmer Community Council and in Assembly District 2. Madam Clerk, mailings?
Yes, there are 30 public notices mailed April 8th, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And to the board. Do you or any member of your immediate family have a substantial financial interest in any property affected by this decision, or will you recognize a foreseeable profit as a result of this decision? Hearing and seeing none. Have you received or otherwise engaged in ex parte contact with the applicant, other parties interested in the application, or members of the public concerning the application or issues presented in this application, either before the application or during any period of time the matter is submitted for decision, outside of the public process provided by the borough? Seeing and hearing none, are you able to be impartial in this decision? I see no objection, so. And may we have the staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed subdivision will be extending South Mary Street to the end of temporary cul-de-sac. Proposed lots range in size from 0.92 acres to 1.10 acres with a 10-acre tract Access for all lots will be by the proposed extension of South Mary Street. Access requirements will be met once interior street and cul-de-sac have been constructed. A geotechnical report was submitted by Curtis Holler, P.E., stating that each of the proposed lots will contain over 10,000 square feet of contiguous usable septic area and additional 10,000 square feet of usable building area. Tract A is over 400,000 square foot and does not require soils verification. Topographic map and as-built are shown on the agenda plat. Preliminary drainage plan is at Exhibit B3. Average daily traffic calculations are at Exhibit C. Comments, MSB, DPW, and PE, it appears there are plans for connections between Hidden Jewel. They request a meeting with the developer and surveyor. Staff notes this is recommendation number 4B. Permit center, there is an access that does not, there's a driveway that does not have access on the Gunny Sack. Would like them to apply for a driveway permit. This is recommendation number 5. Instar requested an easement with 3 conditions. Planning staff notes that the petitioner will need to sign an easement with Instar and show the recorded information on the plat, recommendation number 6. Conclusion, the preliminary plat of Wisteria Meadows Addition 1 is consistent with AS 294070 platting regulations and MSB 431516 preliminary plats. There were no objections from any federal or state agencies, borough departments, or utilities. At the time of writing, there were no comments from the public. We did get one, and it's in the handouts. Legal and physical access will exist to the proposed lots once the internal street and cul-de-sac have been constructed. Soils report was submitted. All lots have usable area. Staff recommends approval with these 7 findings of fact and 9 conditions of approval.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from the board for Mr. Curlin? Hearing none. Would the applicant's representative like to come forward?
Gary LaRusso with Keystone Surveying, representing the petitioners, and Mr. Carney's still in the back of the room. Okay. So I would like just to address the recommendations for approval. Number 6 is asking to record an N-Star easement over a gas line that doesn't exist. If you look at your exhibit F2, it's a N-Star map. I call them cartoon maps because they're not surveyed. It's just a cartoon. I called N-Star when they first made that comment and said, where does this line go? There's nothing there. And they said, I don't know. And I said, I think your map's off. And so they looked at it and said, yeah, we're about 200 feet off. This, on exhibit F2, the kind of greenish blue gas line is actually about 200 feet south on Hidden Jewel that you just heard. So I just want to amend number 6 and just add at the end of number 6, if still needed by N-Star, so the whole condition would read, record an N-Star natural gas easement document for a 10-foot wide natural gas easement centered on the service line at this location, and provide recording information on final plat if still needed by N-Star. I'm asked N-Star to get a hold of Platting to let them know that they had an error, and I guess they didn't do that. So other than that, that's my overview. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for Mr. LaRusso from the board? You'll be, oh, that's right, we're on initial. I'll address that condition later. Mr. Wagner, you had a,
I'm just gonna ask Mr. LaRusso if we do adopt that to provide me with that rather than try to figure out try to remember what he just said.
yes, sir, that was what's going to come up later. Okay. Well, done, thank you. I'll open the portion for public comment at this point in time. Is there anybody in the audience? Come forward and state your name again, please, and sign the register. And this is for Wisteria Meadows Edition 1.
Do I need to sign it twice?
Madam Clerk says no, so you're good.
All right. Fred knows who I am, but for those that forgot, Martin George, I live in Glenview. Looking at both of the traffic maps, it appears to me that they're counting each lot as traffic. Is that correct? So I'm going to ask the board to object to this and get a third-party traffic survey in there. They're showing 5 coming out of Hidden Jewel. That means people, one lot, each driver one time leaves but never comes back. At minimum, that would be 10. And it's the same all the way through the subdivision. This traffic survey is erroneous. If you look at the map, it basically shows 1 car a day leaving, not coming back, not taking their kids to hockey practice, not taking their kids to the mall. It needs to be better than that, so we understand how many cars, is this the right classification for that many cars? So the little bit I've heard is this is a class 3 road. Does it support that many cars going in and out with the addition to that? I have no idea, but I don't think, well, I know this traffic count map is not correct. I can sit on my back porch and tell you what they are if you'll buy me some beer. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. Anyone else like to weigh in on Wisteria Meadows Edition 1? Hearing and seeing none, we will close there's no one online, is that correct, Mr.?
There aren't, nobody online.
All right, so public comment is closed on this, and Mr. LaRusso is back up.
Okay, just to clarify for the neighbors, because they don't know how the traffic count works. And why would they? They don't do this. So, right? That's a lot count. And the way the ADT is figured is 10 trips per parcel. So you would multiply the number you see here by 10. It's a lot count. And that's the way the subdivision construction manual addresses traffic count is per parcel, 10 trips per parcel, which is actually, when we wrote that construction manual, we knew that was kind of a high number, but it's a standard nationwide to use the number 10. The previous construction manual used 6 trips per parcel, which was actually more realistic, but for uniformity within the borough, that's why it's now 10. And I can speak very well to the construction manual, and so can Mr. Wagner, because we were both on the committee that wrote it. So that's why it only says 5. And it's really 5 lots. So other than that, I know the roads when Wisteria, the initial Wisteria went in, the roads were certified to be residential subcollector to Priest Avenue, because that was a condition back then for the board members that weren't here for that case. And that was last year, maybe? I think last year, early last year. If there's any questions, I'll hopefully can answer them. Mr. Bush.
Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Mr. LaRusso, why do we have a cul-de-sac to the east and not one to the north?
There's one to the east because that's where any development might occur. There is a cul-de-sac on the north. It just doesn't show here. Initially, when we submitted, we were just going to extend that road up a little bit, but Public Works wanted it extended it to the property line. And once you get past 200 feet, which that would be at that point, the borough requires someplace for a maintenance truck to turn around. And so we did have that meeting with DPW. It doesn't show on the record, and both the petitioner and Public Works agreed we would just build a cul-de-sac at the end. And that's why there's not one, because initially we were only going to go 200 feet. But petitioner agreed to extend it and put one in. Cul-de-sacs are expensive, so.
So are you gonna show a
Yes.
turnaround spot there?
Yes. Yeah.
On the final?
Yeah, and actually I recommended that be a condition of approval, but it never made it in there. But that's okay. We knew what we were going to do. The petitioner does what he says he's going to do, and so do I, actually. So there'll be a cul-de-sac there.
If it's on the final, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. I don't know, Mr. LaRusso, so whether I should address this question to you. You're the one that brought it up, or I should address it to Mr. Wagner, but you just pricked my interest. When you're showing traffic counts, why don't we show the raw numbers? The multiply, if I understood what you said, you look at the lots, and then state DOT says we use a multiplier of 10 per lot, but yet we just show the lots, and behooves the board and the public to know that that multiplier's there. I can't wrap my mind around that. Help me here.
And honestly, Mr. Johnson, I agree with you. I didn't put this together. And I'll have Mr. Holler next time just put the number in there. That's what the board wants to see.
I'm a simple man. I like simple answers. Thank you, sir. Mr. Wagner, did you kind of weigh in on this?
Yeah, through the chair, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fred Wagner, Platting Officer. Yeah, I actually wrote down on the exhibit that I pulled out of my book here to add a legend if we're going to do a count like this or show the actual count. It would have been easy to throw a little circle, say lot number, multiply times 10 for ADT, and then everybody would know. Or we just show I agree with you as well, and it was a no-brainer. Actually, when Mr. George mentioned it, I was like, yeah, we probably should ask for something a little more explanatory, because we deal with this every day, and we look at it and we go, okay, add 10, throw a 0 on there, and I'm like looking at D. Priest and Seth Grover, that's right, and I'm looking, yeah, 610 is what I think, but it says 61, and I can understand completely how that's confusing for the public. Going forward, we will probably add it to the subdivision construction manual, or just make sure that we request that from petitioners when they submit it, that they either put a legend or use the number.
Like I said before, I agree. I understand how the neighbors wouldn't know what that means. I wouldn't know unless I was on the committee. I mean, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate from both of you that clarification. Any more questions for Mr. LaRusso? Thank you, sir. Well, I would ask for a motion. Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the preliminary plat of Wisteria Meadows, Addition 1, Section 10, Township 17 North, Range 02 East, Seward Meridian, Alaska, contingent on staff recommendations 1 through 9, and number 6, adding comma if needed, and 7 findings of fact. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bush. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Krieger, thank you. Discussion among the board. Mr. Bush?
I make a motion to add a recommendation to 10 for, I think it's the north end of Mary Street, I think it is, to show a turnaround area.
Do I have a second on that? Mr. Burt, second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, Mr. Bush, I appreciate that amendment. I feel the same way. Is there any objection to adding conditions of approval number 10 that would require the cul-de-sac be shown and required as condition of approval?
Yeah, I think it's, I don't think he wants to show a cul-de-sac, just a turnaround.
Okay, I stand corrected. That was your motion for turnaround?
Yeah, on the north end of South Mary Street, I think it is.
Okay, and second, you concur with that, Mrs. Krieger? A turnaround rather than cul-de-sac? Okay, so the condition of approval is a turnaround. Any more discussion? Any objection to adding condition number 10? So be it, that's approved. Now we're back to the main motion to approve the plat of Wisteria Meadows Edition Number 1. Still open for discussion among the board? Hearing seen none, are we ready to vote? Is there any objection to approving Wisteria Meadows Edition 1 plat? Hearing seen none, it's passed unanimously. That is all the plats we have on the agenda for today. There's no items of business or miscellaneous. So we're down to platting officer, or platting staff and officers' comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have 6 cases scheduled for the May 16th meeting, and we will, I'm going to cut that short. We have a member who wants to get out of here by 3:30, and we can do that if we're quick. Do you have any comments?
No comments.
I will entertain comments from the board. We'll start at my left. Ms. Greger? See a lot of... Butch, or Mr. Halford?
I do have, I'm not sure if it's a statement or a rhetorical question, but I'm approaching a dilemma. And, you know, we had a couple of cases today where the requirements were clearly met. And I voted yes, to approve on the one complicated one. But I didn't get to vote on whether or not it was a good idea. And I don't know what the process is, and I think I need to have some understanding of it, and so I can approach comfort that, yeah, you can do it because you can get away with obeying the law, but that doesn't make it a good idea or, sound reasoning or anything. I'm not sure, what are the folks that were obviously affected and offended to do at this point? Can they appeal to the borough, or? I don't understand the process well enough. I feel like I'm becoming a bureaucrat. Yeah, yep, here, stamp it, and you go on. I'll listen to anybody.
Through the chair.
Mr. Wagner?
Yeah, the public has the right to appeal the decision if they feel they want to go through that process. The same process that the petitioner could have used as well, if we had gone with the original vote, so. There would be, the process is generally to ask for a reconsideration, but in order to ask for a reconsideration, you have to meet certain criteria for a reconsideration, so I don't think, without seeing it, it would be a reconsideration and or an appeal. The reconsideration would come back to this board. There would be a request to reconsider the hearing, and if that were granted by the planning board, we would rehear it. It'd be just like a brand-new hearing for the case. If they went it straight to appeal, that would go to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. The Board of Adjustments and Appeals could, they could remand it back to the planning board to make another decision. If they disagreed with certain parts of it, they could craft their own decisions, or they could support the planning board's decision ultimately. So there's several. This is the main reason why we don't talk about cases after we've ruled on them, because they could always come back. So we don't talk about past business, we talk in generalities. You don't say, hey, yeah, I think you did a good job on that. You talked about, in a past subdivision, we did something like this. That's okay. Don't name a subdivision, don't name a road, don't be specific. Generalities are how we deal with talking about issues that we've met in the past. So I think that as cumbersome as it probably seemed to you, I think that that process worked the way it should have. I think that, having to, anyways, I think it worked the way it was. I know that it's uncomfortable. I feel for you. I don't have to make these decisions that you're making today, but we as a staff try to make it so that you aren't forced into decisions that are this difficult. We try to get all the facts for you, present all the facts, and yes, the public often doesn't want to see what we're doing, but that doesn't mean that a property owner isn't allowed to do that. We don't, we don't get to necessarily tell our neighbor what they can do with their property. What we can tell them is outlined in borough code. If we want stronger code, and that it really has to come from the assembly, you can start with planning commission. We can make resolutions. We can have a meeting if you feel that something strongly, and you want to put forth a planning board resolution where we recommend that the assembly take up a matter and try to come to a solution. They, of course, may or may not honor that resolution, but it goes on the record. It's official. It says, hey, we are trying to do something. We have passed several resolutions requesting all kinds of things over the years as a planning board. So if you are uncomfortable with things and you want to see something changed, again, ideas, we're about to sit down and start doing another fairly extensive look at the code, both the subdivision construction manual, Title 43, Titles 11 and 17, which we actually deal with in offsets and what we have for zoning in the valley.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner.
I have the Board of, you said the Board of Appeals?
Yeah, Board of Adjustments and Appeals. It's a separate board.
Would it be improper or, not recommended that, it seems like we should make that a part of our public statement, that, we approve this. If you don't like it, take it up with the Board of Appeals and Adjustments. We may not make any friends over there.
I mean, there's a lot of, at what point do we stop? Are we just gonna start reading every title? There comes some point where people have to familiarize themselves. That's why we're here. If the citizens have questions afterwards, like I recommend, you speak to staff. You need it, and then we can guide you on. If there's concern from that, I don't know who all remained in there. I don't know if they got anybody from the borough in their conversation and informed them of this, but, yeah, we can, I don't know. We used to send out the final, we used to send out the Platting Authority action letters to anybody who spoke. It was determined that code didn't require that, and it was somewhat costly at times. That does spell out the appeal process, but the appeal process does exist, and if, you're always welcome to, if you're in a situation where you see a lot of people like this, you can always mention it as well. It's not, you're not prohibited from telling them that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Bush.
I just wanted to, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank the staff for doing a good job. I can zoom in on the plats and read the text and everything. And to Fred, thank you for your astute observations, and you're certainly heard. And just one public comment, he couldn't hear very well. And I know, Ms. Heidel, I couldn't hear you either. If you can get a little closer for us, thank you.
Mr. Cohn?
I echo that as well. Hard of hearing, it does help a little bit. I do think some of our questions could be answered early on when the packet is available to us. If we really scan through it and we have these, there are certain things that we are dealing with on a repeated basis, and cul-de-sacs is one of those. One of the questions that I have is, when we look at a plat, there's an obvious direction where a possible connection could be made. Sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. If a note could be put in to why that was not connected or considered, I would appreciate that.
I'd also recommend, if you ever have a question, any question when you're reviewing one of the staff reports, reach out to Kayla. She'll email her the question, we'll look at it as staff, and then we'll answer it to everybody. Because we can't have, we won't just answer one of you. Everybody has to be dealing with the same information. So any questions like that, if you sing it, one of the other members is probably singing it as well. Because we've seen that a couple of different times where the members say, hey, I saw that too. So ask questions early. We can answer them before we get here, and it cleans up the process.
Thank you. One last comment. This was probably one of the toughest meetings we've had. Mr. Wagner, I'd ask you about a private meeting to understand the process, and I think that some questions were brought up by other board members. So rather than just explaining the process from start to finish to one person, if the rest of the board's in favor, I would like to have the whole board understand the process, how it works from start to finish. Maybe that would answer some of our unanswered questions. So is that something, Mr. Wagner, that the U.S. Platting Officer would be willing to put together for us?
Maybe what we'll do, maybe we should plan at the end of a meeting, I can put on a presentation. I'll step down from here, take the podium, and do some type of a PowerPoint, and I can go through how our process works, where it starts. I know it's not quite what you and I had talked about, but to do what you and I had talked about would be really difficult with the whole board. We'd run into Open Meetings Act stuff. I think that when you put it this way, I think I could fairly easily come up with something, and with the help of staff, be able to answer questions that the board may have to the process. And that way, we can do it at the end of a meeting. We don't drag the public out. Mr. LaRusso will probably come because he wants to heckle us, but.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wagner. I've also contacted, I have a few friends that are, in the business of getting their input on how the process works for them. I know I had to be very, very careful in what interaction we have, but maybe in that presentation, we could have someone that actually utilizes our service. We do provide service for the borough, but I'd just like a fully understanding of the total process. So, and maybe we look at one of our meetings when we don't have 5 or 6 cases, that we could tag this on at the end. So let's kind of keep that in mind. So with that's it. I know we went over 3:30. Someone was wanting to get away, so we are adjourned.